Tonight, on Talking Points, the House and Senate vote to repeal internet privacy protections.
We have a statement of administration policy on that bill. That we'll have further updates, and when we do, we sign it, I'm sure we'll have further details on why.
Hong Kong's new leader is announced, and protests erupt in response.
Republican infighting continues.
I have talked about the need to go from being an opposition party to being a proposition party and a governing party.
How could it shape the government moving forward? We'll have the answers.
More ahead.
This is Talking Points. House intelligence hearings for President Trump's former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, are approaching. I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney. President Trump's former campaign chief, Paul Manafort, and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, have volunteered to speak to the House Intelligence Committee as part of the ongoing investigation into Russian influences in the election. Manafort is wanted for questioning over concerns of his connections to former pro-Russian Ukrainian dignitaries. Kushner is being sought for questioning by the Intel Committee for having arranged meetings between campaign advisors and Russian ambassador to the U.S., Sergei Kislyak.
The chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, a Republican from California, admitted to holding a meeting on White House grounds revealing that the government could have collected communications from Trump and his administration in its surveillance of foreign leaders. Democrats and skeptics are arguing that Nunes, who was a member of Trump's transition team, is corrupting the investigation by speaking with the administration and should recuse himself from the Russian probe. Take a listen to what House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer had to say.
I think Mr. Nunes has simply disqualified himself, and many of his Republican colleagues think that as well. Certainly, Senator McCain said that the credibility had been undermined. Senator Graham said the same thing, and Walter Jones, a Republican in the House of Representatives, gave the same view.
And we have some breaking news tonight. Former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn is offering to testify in the Russian interference investigations in exchange for immunity. Flynn resigned last month after reports showed that he communicated with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. prior to the inauguration.
Now, Mike, if he's offering his immunity in exchange for his questioning, it clearly means that he is, one, guilty of something, but two, wary that his questioning could lead to his unveiling of something that was illegal. So this certainly presents already some pretty difficult waters for the Trump team to be weighing into.
And we can't speculate exactly what he may be guilty of, but normally you don't offer yourself and then ask for immunity if there's not something at least there. So it's definitely not a good sign for the Trump administration. This should hinder things moving forward as these investigations just start to begin.
Absolutely.
When we come back, New York's budget is due tomorrow, but what stands in its way? Find out after the break.
Superheroes? Just four brothers who hate bullies and love this city. Gear up, guys.
Hey, Hard, what's this?
That's my resignation letter.
You're resigning.
Why? Because you're constantly ignoring me. You're half as active as you used to be, and you get stuff like this. You've been putting me under a lot of pressure lately. That's why I'm ready to quit.
I forgot. I'll do better. Please, don't quit on me.
Okay, but remember, it's not what you say, it's what you do.
Listen to your heart. Don't let it quit on you.
Let's go for a walk.
Uncontrolled high blood pressure could lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
New York State's budget is due tomorrow. And while Governor Cuomo's budgets have always been punctual, this year could be different. Talking Points contributor Connor White is here to talk about what stands in the way. Connor, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So it seems like every year, they just get that budget in on time, but you have the Senate being controlled by Republicans and the House, or the Assembly being controlled by Democrats. So obviously a lot of contention going on here. Now, what exactly are the most contentious aspects of this budget?
Well, there are still 4 main points that they haven't agreed on yet. Governor Cuomo and Democrats are still pushing for the age of criminal responsibility to be raised so that 16 and 17-year-olds can't be tried as adults. Cuomo is particularly pushing for free public college tuition for families that count as middle class, which is more or less an annual income of $125,000 or less. He's also looking to expand ride services like Uber and Lyft in upstate cities, including Syracuse. And Republicans are also, with regard to education, looking to try to increase funding for charter schools, which is not something that everyone is on board with.
Now, with lots of conflicting viewpoints, do you think that the budget will be able to not only be figured out, but have like a solid platform by tomorrow?
Well, it depends on who you ask. Some legislators are confident in leadership and confident in the work that's been done, and that they'll be able to push something out by the state fiscal year, which does start on April 1st. Budget needs to be in tomorrow. If you ask others, including Governor Cuomo, it may not be a good idea to have it in. Cuomo has laid out possible extension plans to sort of counteract what the federal government may be doing. Republican legislators in particular think this is just a negotiation ploy. They think that other than some of the points that I hit on just now, budget's basically done.
And so you have Republicans in complete control of the federal government between the Senate, House, and the presidency. So their budget is likely to be vastly different than the New York budget. How exactly will the New York budget and Andrew Cuomo adapt to that?
Well, they may have to put more money into things where federal dollars used to exist. So these are things like education, healthcare, and, as I discussed last week, environmental action. Healthcare in particular could be an issue because although the recent Republican health proposal failed, they still want those Medicaid block grants, and that means that New York State has to come up with that money for Medicaid recipients. As I mentioned last week, Superfund sites, they're losing money. There's EPA cuts. New York State may have to reroute money to places where they haven't before under the Obama administration.
Well, with the deadline fast approaching, we'll definitely keep our eyes tuned to it. Connor, thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Last week, a bill passed in the Senate allowing internet service providers to sell your online browsing information to advertisers and third parties. On Tuesday, the same bill passed through the House, and President Trump is expected to sign it into law. Talking Points contributor Josh Feinblatt is here and says it may be less of a change than you think. Josh, thanks for being here.
Of course.
Now, why do Democrats not want this bill passed?
Democrats, a lot of the times have the mindset of, let us keep our information private, and this falls under that. Internet service providers would be able to take online browsing information and history and be able to sell it. One of the lead Democrats on this, Representative Keith Ellison, said, "Any member of Congress who thinks this bill is a good idea ought to release their personal browsing history to their constituents." And it's not just Democrats in the House and the Senate, it's people as well. People are backing up. Max Temkin, the creator of Cards Against Humanity, the game, said he will buy and publish the browser history of every single person in Congress and their aides if this happens. So people are very outraged that their information could be sold.
So aren't websites like Google and Facebook already collecting this sort of data? Because I got to tell you, when I do some online shopping, the second I go to another page, an advertisement's right there telling me what I want to buy.
Sure. So if you're shopping online for, I don't know, let's just say hats.
I do like hats.
Yes. So the Facebook and Google or websites like that a lot of times have those policies, but it's contained within their website. So, if you hop on Facebook right after you're thinking about buying a hat, Facebook might have those ads specifically for you, but it's not the entire internet.
And when it comes to actually getting this bill passed, or why did this bill pass? Mm-hmm. And more specifically, what are some of the positives that the American people can draw from?
So some of the positives that might come from it. It's great for advertisers and businesses that want to buy this information. ISPs are going to get a lot of new money, and that might trickle down to the American people saying, they used to do, pay us $30 a month and we won't sell your information, that type of thing. They might take those away. But the real reason this went through, heavy lobbying by a lot of internet service providers, big names like Verizon, AT&T, stuff like that.
And if President Trump does sign off on this bill, what exactly can the American people do to maintain their control of their own browsing history?
Yeah, so we're not too sure yet. It has not been too clear. You might be able to opt out in some plans. If you do, it's probably not going to be easy. It might be hidden in some terms and conditions, which we all definitely read. But a lot of people won't even know that this happens, so it would definitely be very difficult. Or they might even say, like, hey, you can pay to opt out.
Well, read the fine print.
Of course.
Josh, thanks for providing your insight.
Thank you.
Well, that's one thing the Republicans can agree on, but the GOP continues to battle party divisions. We'll look into them and find out what they mean. Stay with us.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
Here's your check. Oh, you got it. Since I got rid of my car, I really enjoy walking.
Okay. Gone. No.
Getting pulled over for buzz driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates.
Oh, you're home early. You live with your mom?
That'll set your game back a few years. Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is...
Come on, it's not that hard.
My big man fingers are having a problem with these little tiny buttons.
Whoa, watch it there. Your blood pressure's gonna go through the roof.
Tell me about it. I'm trying to learn how to get it down. Instead, it keeps going up.
High blood pressure can increase the risk for heart attack or stroke. Learn how to keep yours at a healthy range.
Ever hear a voice command? Just say text barbershop to 97779.
That's not what I said.
Just give me that. Now my blood pressure's up.
Last week's failed health care vote was a hit to Republicans. With both moderates and hardliners planning to vote no on the bill, GOP leaders gave up their plan to replace Obamacare. And President Trump promises to go after the Republicans who shot the bill down. Talking Point's political correspondent Dan Prager is here to discuss the patent rift in the Republican Party. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, we saw President Trump tweeting a lot of the blame towards the House Freedom Caucus, who played a major role in defeating this bill because it was not conservative enough. Why is he alienating a large part of his party? I mean, you have over 30 members that are in this Freedom Caucus.
Well, he's not necessarily thinking in terms of he's going to alienate them forever. He likes loyalty. President Trump likes when he has his people behind him. And the Freedom Caucus basically stood up and said no to him. And he did not like that. He told them.
And prior to the vote, they did say that they were going to reward Republicans who did vote for it by campaigning for them, but they didn't stick with that.
And they also said they would punish Republicans who didn't. And now Trump is hoping to kind of put the pressure on these people and make sure that they don't do it again, which is what he was trying to do when it didn't work the first time.
Certainly interesting how he shifted the blame from Democrats to the Freedom Caucus.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, he shifted the blame away from himself and Paul Ryan on a bill that was really unpopular and shifted it over to the Freedom Caucus and Democrats, and he's blaming both.
Well, beyond shifting the blame, though, what if the Freedom Caucus doesn't fall in line?
If they don't fall in line, Trump's going to go after them even further. Like I said before, he won't. He'll make sure to campaign against them. He's already threatened to try and primary some people.
And if
in
that
the Freedom
persists,
Caucus.
do you perceive a split between the Freedom Caucus and the GOP?
There definitely won't be a complete split. I mean, there already is kind of a split right now between ideologies. But think of it more like Southern Democrats before the 60s, where they're kind of forcing Republicans to change their bills so that they get what they want and just kind of taking that giant caucus power and using it.
I mean, with Obamacare, Republicans said for nearly 7 years that they were going to replace this, and then they get in with a large majority now, and they could not get it done. So if they can't do this, how moving forward, if this is sort of shifting in major factions of the GOP are diverging. How are they going to get things done?
Well, it is important to remember that of all the things that they've tried to get done, this was really the only one. A lot of the other ones are very popular. Gorsuch has pretty much entire Republican support. So a lot of things that are conservative are still getting put through. But major ones like healthcare, where there's a lot of disagreement, and that was one of Trump's pet projects, one of his promises, that's a big thing. So if we look at other big issues like that and something doesn't happen, Republicans are going to have to try and appease the conservatives without alienating the moderates.
So if the infighting persists and we don't really see them accomplishing much because of the strict divisions, what does this ultimately mean looking forward and beyond that, looking towards 2018?
2018 could be rough for Republicans. There's already kind of a chance they're talking about Democrats trying to retake the House. And that's the big thing for Democrats. They want the House. Now, remember, the Freedom Caucus is the most conservative members of Congress. Their districts are very red. So most of them are going to stay. If it's not them, it may be a more moderate Republican. But this rift going further, if things can't get done like healthcare, people will lose faith in the Republican Party, and it could help Democrats in 2018.
Well, you could make the counter argument that if they were to repeal Obamacare, a lot of the people losing insurance would be Trump voters. So in turn, they could even lose more support had they done it.
Definitely very true. But on the other hand, we're looking at major issues in the future. I can't speak to whether or not he would gain or lose support for Obamacare. That's just conjecture. But big issues in the future that might alienate Republicans could cause them to stay home.
Well, they're moving on for now, but I expect them to come back to this issue very soon.
Definitely.
A woman now holds the highest position in Hong Kong for the first time in history. Former Chief Secretary for Administration Carrie Lam was elected as the city's new chief executive this past week. Talking Points correspondent Sina Saifi is here to tell us about how Lam is expected to impact Hong Kong's relationship with China. Sina, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Now, before we get started, can you tell us why there is such contention between Hong Kong and China?
Well, Hong Kong has always been part of China since forever, until the early 1830s when it was colonized by UK. And then in 1997, there was a new policy called the One Country, Two Systems that handed over Hong Kong's sovereignty back to China. So basically, Hong Kong can exercise its own economy, its own government, legal system, basically be on its own, but still be considered part of China. And obviously, China, to some extent, wants to continue to exercise its control over the region. So it has caused some problems in the sense where it starts to reinterpret the document to some extent.
And since these election results came out, how exactly are the people reacting?
So in Hong Kong, people aren't too pleased because Lam is actually very pro-Beijing and she has a harsh stance on the whole situation. The Umbrella Movement Party, which developed back in 2014, that they were trying to release some of the control of Beijing over Hong Kong. They protested a lot and they were prosecuted. As for in Beijing, they were obviously very happy because that means that now Beijing can have more control. And back in 2014, also when the Umbrella Movement took place, Lam actually helped the government in Beijing enact a law that would basically force Hong Kong to, any of their candidates have to be vetted by Beijing before they can go into elections. So that limits basically Hong Kong's control over their own elections.
Now, what will the biggest role or the biggest struggle that Lam will play in this new position?
Basically, she needs to heal the divide between both societies because the inherent culture and values and citizens of both Beijing and Hong Kong are very different. And even though she stated that she's not going to use Beijing for any decision making, it's clear that she is very pro-Beijing. So she just needs to decide how she's going to, heal the rifts between them.
In our final 30 seconds, any chance that these election results could impact the relationship with the U.S. moving forward?
Well, obviously, now it's a tough time between China and the U.S., so if she's pro-Beijing, this could maybe, Hong Kong is a very economic hub for the entire world, especially in that region, so possibly this could help in the economy with trade with the region, with the United States. But in terms of policy, it's not very clear right now.
Well, Zina, always a pleasure.
Thank you.
After the break, we'll cover some stories you missed. We'll be right back.
Your daughter just had her first breakup. Do you A, put yourself in her shoes? B, console her?
Don't worry, sweetie. This is gonna happen a lot.
Or C, find her a new boyfriend.
Nice single boys. That was weird.
As a parent, there are no perfect answers. But you don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
They said I have troll teeth.
That my voice sounded like a possessed baby doll.
That no one would ever love someone as stupid as me.
That I was fat, ugly.
Disgusting.
The effect of bullying is potent. We will no longer be the silent majority.
Now, when you see online bullying, there's something you can do about it.
We're gonna take action with the I.
I am a witness. I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness.
I am a witness, and so are you.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. Gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. So wet.
The 4 longest-serving members of the Syracuse Common Council will leave office this year. Local correspondent Ray Marek explains how a new crop of young candidates plan to make their mark.
So my name is Michael Green. I'm 30 years old, and I'm running in the 4th District for the Syracuse Common Council.
The 4 longest-serving members of the Common Council, including the president himself, will exit this year. Looking to fill their empty seats are a batch of eager young politicians. Michael Green is back in Syracuse after working for New York City's Economic Development Agency.
I look at every issue that's in the city right now through the lens of economic development. You know, I think crime's an issue because poverty is correlated with crime. I think that the schools struggle because kids who grow up in poverty don't do well in school in any part of the country.
Up for a different seat is Tim Rudd, who is running for an at-large position on the council. After buying and renovating a house on the city's south side, he sees the impact of Syracuse poverty up close.
Neighborhoods are frankly in a crisis. They're aging, they're not having young people who want families move back in and reinvest, and there's a high level of vacancy in every neighborhood in Syracuse.
These are just 2 of many candidates looking to make their mark on the Common Council.
Now, for these candidates, it will still be a while before they can call this place their home. That's because the current councilors won't actually be leaving until the end of December. That's when they officially finish their terms.
And before these veterans go, some last-minute advice.
Age is inconsequential to me. It's more about your dedication to the people who live in the city of Syracuse. That you do the honorable thing, that you are humble to serve, and that you are responsive.
Reporting from City Hall, Ray Marek, CitrusTV.
Here at Talking Points, we value in-depth coverage of the world's most pressing issues.
But some stories inevitably don't capture mainstream attention.
This week, we have 5 important stories you may have missed. Russian President Vladimir Putin is threatening to crack down on protesters in response to recent protests against his government. Protests were sparked after a viral video alleged that the Prime Minister of Russia had amassed a real estate empire.
Many of the thousands who took to the streets in cities across the country were in their teens and 20s. One Russian journalist said that young people in the country are delusioned with the leadership and have nothing to lose by protesting.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is planning to lift human rights restrictions from an arms deal with Bahrain in an effort to appease the Middle Eastern country. Bahrain plays a strong strategic role for the United States in the Middle East and is the home to the 5th Fleet of the U.S. Navy.
Critics argue that this move will signal to other Middle Eastern countries that this president isn't putting as much of an emphasis on human rights as his predecessor. This move is likely to upset European allies ahead of Tillerson's first NATO meeting on Friday.
Missouri Senator Claire McCaskill is launching an investigation into manufacturers of prescription painkillers. She's demanding records that indicate what these companies knew about abuse potential, as well as marketing practices and sales presentations.
The numbers of prescription drug overdose deaths have quadrupled in the United States since 1999. Sales of prescription drugs have also increased by a factor of 4 over the same stretch of time.
North Carolina's state government reached a bipartisan compromise to repeal the state's law requiring transgender people to use the bathroom that matches their birth. The controversial bill was signed into law by Republican Governor Pat McCrory last March and resulted in sports leagues, businesses, and entertainers boycotting the state.
The vote to repeal passed both houses of the North Carolina General Assembly earlier today. However, supporters on both sides are unhappy. Those in favor of the law think it was a breach of character by the Republicans, and those against the law think too many concessions were made in the repeal effort. When we get back, Mike and I will end the show with the stories we look forward to seeing in the news.
They told me a bottle couldn't dream. That I would never become a superhero. But I learned how to fly. Just to come back in a new disguise. And be the hero that I've always wanted to be.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
In the weeks ahead, two major things are catching our eye. First is Trump's tax reform.
Up next on President Trump's lineup of major policy proposals is tax reform. Following a defeat of the proposed GOP health care bill, President Trump said he is ready to move on for now. Sean Spicer suggested that Mr. Trump will be taking the lead on the reform. The policy was a central promise throughout his campaign. Take a listen to Spicer's take on why the current tax code needs fixing.
I think our tax code is outdated, and frankly, on the business side, we're uncompetitive. There's a reason that companies are leaving America to go to other places.
While the details of Trump's plan are not yet clear, the House GOP has been working on their own version for over a year. After the collapse of the health care bill, cracks within the Republican majority started to show. Moving forward, I'm watching to see if President Trump will be able to corral the splitting GOP for major reforms.
Every administration has an agenda, and every agenda requires prioritization of resources. Federal agencies have shifted in priority from administration to administration, but no major agency has seen its boss try to completely destroy it from the inside out. The Environmental Protection Agency is a regulatory agency that ensures the vitality and security of our natural environment. It is not for or against business, it is not politically motivated, it is a watchful eye for environmental and public health. The Trump administration signed an executive order this past Tuesday rolling back much of the progress made by the Obama administration to curb the growing threat of climate change. In Trump's budget proposal for the fiscal year of 2018, funding for the EPA is comprehensively cut by 31%. Such a demoralizing figure, coupled with executive actions that directly threaten resources and public health, represent a deterioration of the EPA over the course of Trump's term. To salt the wound, the administration appointed Scott Pruitt, former Attorney General of Oklahoma and leading advocate against the EPA, to represent the very agency he has been a vocal opponent of. With the administration's sentiment not only inhibiting environmental protection, but actively making a choice to destroy the measures developed to ensure the safety of our nation, the EPA will never look the same again.
That's all we have for tonight.
In the meantime, check out CitrusTV.com for all things Talking Points. You can find webisodes, segments, and blog posts on our personal page.
Thanks for joining us, and be sure to tune in next week. For Talking Points, I'm Mike Riccardi.
And I'm Josh Carney.